Hello and welcome to another edition of Africa Teaching, a production of the Pepperbird magazine and CHESSON Worldwide 360. I'm Karen McLaurin-Chesson, your host. And today we're embarking upon part 2 of traveling the WAMPANOAG Trail with Menoweh. The historical Perry Farm allotment, Watapa Indian Reservation, Fall River, Mass. I welcome all of you back as we continue the historical legacy of 309 years of uninterrupted survival of the William Pequot, Pequot, Perry clan, medicine men, and shaman during the mid-1800s till his death in 1896. The Indian Reservation in Fall River was established by Captain Benjamin Church. For 13 Pocasset clans, he forcibly removed from South Tiverton farther north to Fall River, while putting 200 acres of land in trust of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. By the late 1860s, the only clan remaining on their allotment was this specific clan. All of the presenters will share historical information about their friendships and relationships. Menoweh, the current steward and historian for her family, will now introduce her guests and share their memories of this proud and honorable clan.
I want to welcome you all here to the homestead. This wonderful house that my family called their house of welcoming and love, and the neighbors that surrounded us when this house was first put here in 1911. So we have 3 guests today that are going to share their part of the history. Michael LeBrossier from the Blossom House and the Watershed people of the city of Fall River. Dana Reed, who is 94 now, was our paper boy when he was young, when he was in his teenage days, and Nancy Passenger, who her mother lived across the street and was born across the street in 1911, and her grandmother used Dr. Perry as their doctor. So each one of them are going to share a story about how we were all neighbors to each other before the influx of many English and Portuguese families arrived here, when there were just a few families, and how we all worked together and shared our bounty of the land and all of those other things. So, Michael, an honor to welcome you.
Hi, my name is Michael Lavoisier. I am the City of Fall River's watershed forester. The city has almost 8,000 acres of land surrounding the North Watauga Pond and the Copacut Reservoir. And since the 1800s, the city has protected its water supply and has provided water for the 100,000 or so people who live in the city of Fall River. The city has been neighbors with folks here at the Perry Farm for many, many decades. In 1911, in fact, when there was one family left, it was the Perry family. In order to protect the water supply, the city acquired some of the land from the original reservation allotment, and it needed to protect the water supply. And so the Perry's house was across the street here on Indian Town Road, and in the water supply area. So at that time, the city, in order to keep the lands pure and not have development on the lands, actually moved another house that belonged to the water department, which was on Blossom Road. Moved it here. There's an entry on September 11th, 1911, which talks about how the water board it was actually the Reservoir Commission at the time, talked about the surplus house that they had. It was an old farmhouse, and how they were going to move it, how they were going to pay to transport it, how they were going to build a foundation, put the house on the foundation, build a well, and do some other things to improve it so that the Perry family could actually live here. And so that happened in 1911. And over the years, whether it was Victor Perry, who actually worked for the water department for many years, but there was always a close cooperation, friendship, community, that probably first the Blossom family themselves, the Blossoms moved in the late 1700s, when this Indian reservation was already established. And they lived here for 3 generations, and then when the city took over the Blossom farm, homestead, in 1902, the city then became that new neighbor. And so since then, I would say we've had a great cooperative relationship, and the city is very grateful to have such good neighbors.
Now I want to welcome Nancy Passenger, who is a relative of the family that lived across the street many years ago. So she's going to share her story and the friendships that my family and her family had way back in the 1900s.
Hi, my name is Nancy. Thank you, Menoweh, for the introduction. So I'd like to share with you some of the stories that my mom has shared with us. This is my mom, Ruth, and she was born in 1921. And this is her mom, Clara Moore, and she was born in 1888. And then we think this is a picture of her dad, Thomas Moore, and he was born in 1851. Before that, John Moore came from Ireland. They lived across the street. That would be Clara Moore. My grandmother was born across the street on Indian Town Road, and my mom wrote some stories to tell us about the visits here at the Perry homestead. Thomas Moore lived there. I'm not sure that he was born there, but he lived there during his lifetime when Clara Moore was born at the home on Indian Town Road. So I'd like to share with you some of the writings from my mom. When I was young, at 11 years old, my mother and I used to walk down to the end of Brayton Avenue to Jefferson Street, which was as far as Brayton Avenue went then. I lived at the top of Brayton Avenue, number 88, and at Jefferson Street, we would walk the railroad tracks at the causeway between North and South Watauga Ponds, and then walk Route 6 to Sanford Road, to Old New Bedford Road, to Blossom Road, to Indiantown Road. And there we visited with the Perrys. The house my mother was born in was the first house on the left. And that was there at the time that the Perrys lived next door, but has been pulled down now. Across the street was the home of the Indians my mother grew up with. The father was William, and he was the doctor. He was living during the time that my mother was there, but died before I was born. The ones I knew then were Paul, then, oh, I skipped a one, I'm sorry, were Ernestine, the oldest daughter, then Valeria, then Paul, then Victor. His whole name was Victor Pico Poliwanko Perry. Ernestine had a daughter about 2 years old, and she was called Violet. She married and moved to Boston. The Perrys would have us at their place for lunch, and we would walk through the reservation with them, and we were allowed to do that, but others were not allowed to do that unless they were with them. We picked creeping jenny, that's a plant, and ground pine to make wreaths in the early part of November to decorate our houses. During the summer, Chief Blackhawk, who lived in the north end of Fall River, would visit a lot, and he showed us how to shoot the bow and arrow. Let's see. I think that I need to move to another section of here because I can't see very well. Oh, this is the fun part. So my mother loved the story that when she came to visit, they would greet her at the Narrows. That was the causeway between the Watuppa Ponds, and they would come with a horse and a cart to meet her and give her a ride out here. And then while she was here, they just played all day, and some of the older ones went into the house, but they just played outside, and she just loved that, and she often told that story. Violet is the last of the tribe, and she had no children. She was the last to live at the house. After spending the day at visiting, Victor would get the horse and wagon ready. Sometimes he would use the oxen he had instead of the horse, and take us back to the Narrows, which is the causeway between North and South Watuppa Pond. And there, we would get the trolley car for the city, and then change at the City Hall for the Stafford Road trolley. Sometimes, if we were really low on money, we would walk all the way back from the Narrows to Brayton Avenue, but we would be really tired from all of the day's activities. When Paul died, there was a big write-up in the Herald News about his family, and my mom writes that it must be on record in the library in Fall River. My grandparents' house, my grandparents were Thomas Moore and Eliza Moore, the house that was on Indiantown Road. Then she writes, if we didn't walk the railroad track, we would walk along Jefferson Street to Alden Street, across Alden to Pleasant Street to the Narrows, and we only went on Sundays, so because my mother worked 6 days a week. My mother said when they were growing up, Dr. Perry would mix all kinds of herbs for her, all kinds of medicines, and give it to them when they were sick. He was the only doctor that they had, the only doctor that helped them out when they were sick. It continues. Paul, always dressed up with a white shirt and a suit coat. Victor would wear trousers and a regular shirt. Victor would take us home with his cart and oxen by the causeway. Victor used to sit on the stone wall to wait for a ride home from the city after drinking too much firewater. She wrote, I remember the Perrys because they were always so nice and welcoming to us. I think I treasure these memories of hers as much as she did, and I appreciate that she kept that record for us about having a relationship with the Perrys, which is still important to me today, to have such a wonderful relationship with Menoweh. I thank you for this opportunity.
I just have one minor correction. Ernestine was a midwife. It was Valeria that gave birth to Violet.
Oh, I said it wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So, and that happened, and the story goes that Valeria was impregnated by the French milkman that used to deliver milk on Indian Town Road and had Violet. So Violet was the last to live here on the homestead. And as you can see, it's always women because we live by the matriarchal system. There are men that can live here, but if they're not good men, they are sent away. And the women are the ones that keep and maintain the household and the land and all that is on it. So now I want to introduce Dana Reed, who is 94 years old and getting around better than me, my goodness, and I'm 20 years plus younger than him. But guess what? He used to be a paper boy back in the day and deliver papers to people on Indian Town Road, and he is going to tell his memories of this family, and specifically when he came to deliver the paper to the Perry family.
Well, I was born in Westport, Massachusetts in 1926. I had a brother that was 2 years and 2 days older than me. And I had a paper route when I was 9 years old. And my job didn't last very long. I had it for about 2 or 3 weeks, and the Herald News man that brought the papers out to me said, "You can't be a paper boy anymore. Because the law says you've got to be 10 years old or older." So I said, well, put it in my brother's name. He's 2 years and 2 days older than me. I says, "You'll only have to have it for a few weeks," and I says, "It'll be back to me." So I peddled papers all over North Westport, basically Blossom Road, Indian Town Road, and knew every house. There were good people, many good people. They were hard-working people. I had a grandfather who worked for the city beyond the end of the route, and I didn't peddle papers to him except on Saturdays. And I went up on the end of the route. I went to his house and collected the 15 cents per week that the paper cost. 15 cents per week didn't go far. So I'd go up on Saturday, all the houses I had, and then go to his house, which was beyond. But I'd stay for 2 days. I could stay there with my grandfather for 2 days. It was nice. Paper was 15 cents a week. And out of that, I got a penny a paper. So I got 15 cents a day for going about 4.5 miles on hoof. Because in the winter, the roads weren't too well plowed. Sometimes they weren't plowed at all. And the people were living frugal. Things weren't that great. But they were all happy. The Herald News did do one thing for us. They gave us a Christmas party. And that's the first check I ever got in my life. I had to go down to Fall River with all the Fall River boys and have a show by a magician and that. And then we all got a $5 check. So I didn't want to cash it, but had to eventually. The winters were tough. The winters on Blossom Road were plowed by the city of Florida, the reservation. Pulling 2 horses, pulling a 2-horse plow. But you must remember, with a snowplow being pulled by a horse, he has to be ahead of the horses. So he's out there coming through the heavy snow first before the plow gets to it. And I used to think it was terrible. See those horses coming down the road, pulling, moving their head out of the snow and that, and see the steam coming off their back. It was a wonderful thing, but things improved. The school system was on the old Bedford Road. I peddled a paper to this house. I started at the lower end of Blossom Road, up to Indiantown Road, up to beyond Perry Farm, and then back to the corner and up the rest of the Blossom Road. Yes, the ferries were good friends, because one of them worked for my grandfather, and they were very good people. We went on Saturdays to collect the money for the paper, which was 15 cents a week. Yeah, I was going out the driveway. The driveway was rooted from the dirt and gravel. And the rain was heavy. I left a rut, and I went off of the bicycle, and I cut my head up in the air a little bit and knocked me out. And first thing I know, one of those Perry girls, they were sharp, come right down, picked me up, and got me too. And one of them went out and took a rock and smashed it against these plants. And I learned afterwards they were planted. So you got it moist, it made a mess out of it. And put it on my head, put a big bandage on it. Said, now you go straight home. Don't stop. Go straight home. I got home, my mother wanted to know what was the matter with me. I didn't know what to spill. And I said, I cut my head open. And she said, well, who took care of it? And I said, Valeria, I think it was. And she said, oh, well, what are you going to do with it? I said, leave it alone till tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, it was almost all gone. I mean, that's country medicine, and it worked. But great people. Vic was foreman, worker for the city of Florida. My grandfather was his boss. He worked like a horse. You couldn't believe. He could come through the woods faster than you could go through a plowed lane.
Now I'm turning to my left to point out the picture here of my grandfather and grandmother. This is Dr. Perry, Dr. William Pequot Pelawanko Perry, and his third wife, Fanny Perry, who was from the Mashpee tribe. And she's the one that fought off the city of Fall River to have a house moved here and 5.5 acres cleared so we could remain on the last 100 acres of the original 200 acres of reservation. As Michael pointed out, the Blossom family, and Dana pointed out, and Nancy pointed out, there were just a few families then, and they all shared whatever they had, from cows to pigs to vegetables, and everybody were neighbors. Not like the neighbors today where you only see them coming and going in the morning and coming home at night, and they don't come over to check on you when there's a storm. They don't do any of that. The neighbors that once lived on Indiantown Road, including the Borden family, used to come and cut the grass on these 5.5 acres of land when the spring came and the grass had grown high. And in the winter, he would come and plow the driveway. So this is what neighbors used to do for each other years ago. Regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of anything, we were all human beings to each other. And I hope that returns one day real soon. But I want to share a story, an oral history story that was written by Alice Blossom, one of the descendants of the Blossom family. And what she wrote about my grandfather was their doctor. And Dr. Bill is what they used to call him. Dr. Bill and 2 or 3 others were up on the reservation when I was little. He drank a little, and with his long white beard that shook, I used to be afraid of him. So then she goes on to tell more about Dr. Perry and how he healed. He healed the family and the schoolhouse that they all went to on Indian Town Road. So it's wonderful that all of these documents that have been put in oral history records talk about the kindness and the welcoming that my family was, in spite of us not having some of the rights that other people had during that time. That tells me a lot about the honor of my relatives. And that is what I try to do now that I am the steward and the caretaker of this house, is to always be honorable, no matter what. To always honor our traditions. To treat all life forms as your relations. And so I want to read just a little bit of the story that Fanny said when the city of Fall River came to take the land that she was on when we were closer up the other, heading north on the other side of the street, heading west. And this is what they said. Okay. I think I'm going to have trouble reading this, but I'll tell you. What she did was she stood all alone, because Dr. Perry had died in 1896, with her 4 children, and said not another white person was ever going to take another ancestral inheritance from her family, ever again. And when she said that, the city of Fall River was forced to go to the state. And as Michael said, the city and the state worked to find a house and bring it up here. Because Fanny fought. Because our women and the women of our clan were warriors. We were the caretakers of the land, the agriculturalists, the medicine people, the spiritual people, and all that involves being mother. Just as we call our mothers and grandmothers, well, guess what? Our grandmother is Mother Earth as well. And she is just as important, if not more important, because it's from her that we get our nurture and our nutrients. And if she did not bring forth life for all life forms to eat the medicines and get the herbs and get the nutriments from the plants that grow here, none of us would be here. So I am so, so, so thrilled that I can sit here with you today with all of these people that knew my family and give honor to my grandparents. I hope.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Perry and Mrs. Perry for their contributions to the New England community, not just the 200 acres they lived on, but to the community. Because what I'm hearing here is that they were cross-cultural enough to interact, share love, and mingle and care for the people within the community. And that highlighted, I pray, practices for the rest of the state. And I want to thank you, Menoweh, for your time, your energy, the love, and the sharing of the history of your family.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
It is our pleasure. And I want to thank you folks for watching. And I'm sure that you've truly had the chance to enjoy Native history on Africa teaching. I want to thank you for watching, and I pray that you turn us on next time. And do us a favor, take good care of yourselves.